Hi guys, welcome back to Two Worlds Collide podcast. On today's episode, we have Barnaby Joyce. Today we cover his family's military history, the cost of government crisis, the energy crisis, and much more. I hope you guys enjoy. So interestingly, I start these podcasts straight away like this, but interestingly, we were just having a conversation off air about how you have a long history of serving, just like my family, but my family is mostly Afghanistan war with me and my cousin, but you have a long history of line. Can you tell me about that? I've never heard this from this side of you.
Yes, no, it's very similar and probably my makeup. My grandfather, one father, he was a gunner, so artillery. Started in the full-timer. Started at Gallipoli, arrived there on the first day. He left there on the last. Then he went to the Western Front. He got DCM for bravery under fire on the Western Front, which for his rank was one below VC. Then he finished up there, was in the occupational forces. He walked out the door of his house and came back 5 years later, back to, because of course they didn't come on R&R, back to Australia. And then he was obviously still in the services between the wars. He was at one stage afloat. There's one photo on my wall, and that's my grandfather. He was, which is unusual, was a Catholic, and they nominated him to be the bodyguard of Edward VIII when one of Edward VIII's tour. And there's a photo of what became the King of England and my grandfather was RSM at that point in time, but highly decorated. Then the Second World War, he thought he was out. He thought he'd be right. And my father tells a story where he said, "Oh, sorry, I think his I can't think of his fond name for my grandmother." So they didn't think they'll grab me again. But he then went off to the Second World War. He was his wartime commission. He got to what they call CRA, Commander of the Royal Artillery for the 2nd Division, and went up against the Japanese Guadalcanal. Also around Fiji, all the gun emplacements around Noumea. My grandfather did. Played for combined services against the Welsh and beat them in rugby. And then my father, he signed up. He went off. He got a barrel of a gun, and Americans dropped he was trying to tell them not to, Occupational Health and Safety Act, and said, you got to be careful of loading parts of artillery. And went out in a swing and took his, trying to remember, must have been his right leg out. And my other grandfather, he was on the Western Front as well. He was a radio operator for the Air Force. My grandmother, so my father's mother, she had 7 brothers, not in one war, but over a number. They're all killed. The last one got a direct hit as an air raid warden in London.
All of them?
A lot.
Wow.
So I was brought up, my dad's mates would be blokes that came back from Papua New Guinea, stuff like that, and come to the house. Some of them would come in the house, Mum would leave. It really was seminal. I thought as I grew up that everybody was in the services, and I joined the reserves. Which I just felt I had to, because that was our lineage, what we did. I was with 25 RQR, then 42, then 25 49. So it was just part of what we do, and we lived in our house with a code. It was pretty strict, which was don't query instruction. If you get an instruction, do it. Dad wasn't crazy; he wouldn't beat you. I can't even remember Dad hitting me, but he just knew that when he said something, it meant do it. It meant, and he wouldn't say for you to do stupid things. Can't stand malingerers, unless you're really hurt. Keep going, because it's just a test of your character. Just get through it. Don't make a big fuss. But stand up. If you got to stand up, you stand up. And don't talk about the wars or any wars, because guys who've been around it, if you weren't there, they don't want to talk to you about it, because they don't want to, because none of your business. And so, but and apart from that, I don't think Dad never went to an Anzac Day service, but watched everyone on television.
Is there a reason why he didn't go himself? Or?
Yeah, I'll tell you a funny story. My old man went on to make a bit of money. Okay, he was smart. When he got repatriated, they'd send you off to university. And so that's how he came to Australia, because the only vet school, he was smart, but he had to teach himself physics and chemistry because he'd left school when he was 14 and then became an apprentice boilermaker. Then he went into the war, or into the services, and he got smashed up, and then he repadded out and went to Sydney University because he taught himself chemistry, taught himself physics, got into Sydney University, and that's where he met my mum. And my uncle, he was like F4 Corsairs. But and I completely forgot what I was going to say. But it was
about why he doesn't go to Anzac Day dawn service.
Yeah. So I'd see him, and this was interested in obviously Veterans Affairs. And Dad used to, so it'd be places he'd be selling for millions of dollars, right? So he wasn't short of a quid. And he would start fighting the Department of Veterans Affairs for $20. And he would fight, and get angry. And I said, like, as a young guy, I said, why do you worry about this, mate? You're like mate, I said, why do you worry about this, Dad? Like, you've been blessed, you've gone very well. And he'd say, you give me back my leg, I give them back the money. Real simple deal. Now, when Dad died, we found an account, and every cent he'd got from Veterans Affairs, he'd never spent. He sat it in the account. So not only did he argue for the money, he never spent it. It was just...
more principle.
Yeah, I'm over this. And he said, mate, you don't understand. He said, basically, they get the wheel. He was when he first got out, he was in a wheelchair. He said, they just go park it outside and say, good luck with your life, see you later. And he said, you felt like an odd bod because you didn't belong anywhere. You'd go to your auntie's place. You'd stay there till your inconvenience. Then you'd move on, go somewhere else. He said, my father was still in the services. I suppose in a way he would have been a bit in awe of his father, because he was such a, like, Jack Joyce led the Anzac Day service, led the Anzac Day march at Wellington. Like, he was the boss. And so it was I suppose a dynamic that all associated around in a big way in our family military service. That was how it worked. That's how it worked.
I want to quickly touch on, him not going to dawn service, right? And a bit of similarities in today's day and age, because I get really, really annoyed and really, really angry at the attack of soldiers in Afghanistan. Personally, people that I know, I still know two commando guys, that I'm friends with and I've spent a lot of time with. They're still getting their houses raided by the federal police about war crimes that have never been proven any bit guilty overseas in Afghan, and they're following fake leads, and it's really starting to piss me and the veteran community off. And look, I don't really look at my comments too much on Instagram or Facebook. I stay away from that world, but sometimes I will see a comment in there, and I'll get called a war criminal or a baby killer, and it's happening more and more within the veteran community these days, and I'm getting sick of it. I'm getting really sick of it, and I blame the ABC. And I also blame the government for allowing this to fester and not pull up and not do anything about it. Now, it sort of started under the Scott Morrison era where this shit happened, and I am just fed up of it. Like, is there anything, what's your thoughts on all this?
Well, I suppose running past, I've got good mates who served in Afghanistan like yourself. Travis Barnes, who I speak to pretty continuously. John Wilmot comes up, goes camping on our place. I think they were mates because they served together, and they were pretty high up in the scrub where they were going. And also Heston Russell, which of course everybody knows, it was the same thing. Heston said, what the ABC did, they just scripted that. Like he said, I had my body cam, like I did, because they've scripted how many rounds went down, and it's BS. That's not it. There
was something coordinated to try and come after us.
It's malicious. It's malicious, and
I want to know what was behind it.
I think there is. It's an attitude of the left. I mean, that's probably one of the things that sort of affects me. This is how socialism works. They find that they want to impugn you. They want to find guilt. They do it in this conniving way, like I'm your mate, and then in the background they're like a snake. They're working their way to sort of denigrate it. They denigrate what is good, and then they promote what is ephemeral rubbish and a lie. And I think this is a part of the polarization in politics. So why do they denigrate? I mean, Australia has had to deal with this all the way through. I remember Anzac Day service. I said my father never went, always watched. It's just the way, I don't know, absolutely respected it, but didn't want to participate. I remember when he had a couple of medals he never got, and they actually was sent to him in the mail. I remember him opening the mail and he looked at me and went, always wondered where these were, and then just chucked them in a cupboard. Never wore them, ever.
Yeah.
Ever wore them. But my grandfather had racks of them. So back in the early 80s, and I can remember this, Anzac Day service was predominantly real return servicemen, ex-servicemen, that's overwhelming, on the piss in Sydney, falling out of the pubs. And there was a real move by the lefties to shut it down. And it started with this women against rape in war, this sort of like peripheral thing. And what they're trying to do is get rid of it. They don't like this iconography in Australia, to remove it out. And they were sort of getting there. They were sort of getting there. This crazy lefty rubbish was sort of getting there. But for once, and it's the most beautiful thing, every now and then the Australian people had an epiphany, and they sort of sat back and went, bullshit. No, you're not going to do that. I remember there was that play, One Day of the Year, and I said Williamson, I can't remember. He sort of denigrated Anzac Day as like a sort of an anachronism of Dad, and we have to put up with this. But the Australian people had an epiphany, and all of a sudden they went, no, you're not going to take that office. And then it became a commemoration of pride, not just for the servicemen and women now, but for their families. And it became an issue for the families. And I always try to reiterate that when I'm speaking. One of the greatest lines I had was speaking at the Australian War Memorial as my senior politician there when I was Deputy Prime Minister, and really meant a lot to me. But a commemoration, I always say to it, because you're families of honour. Your families have served. You are families of honour. You don't have to prove anything anymore. The lefties don't like that idea. They want to make honour something that's, to do with a realignment of the social character of Australia, gender fluidity, the great god Gaia of the environment. We're going to, rather than fight totalitarianism, we're going to take on the weather, And I truly, they look for an alternate moral code, and it doesn't tolerate the moral code that we have and that we live by.
Yeah, and I don't know what it is, Barnaby, but I think this has been set up for about 10 years now. I think for some weird reason, you look at the indoctrination of kids, you look at the attack on Australian soldiers, which is an attack on our national pride. You look at people saying stuff in Parliament House, Green senators saying stuff in Parliament House like they want to change our flag. Yeah. To me, this has just been festering for years, and we haven't really had a government willing to stand up for it. I believe there's something forming now on the right, but before that, the allowance of governments and then government taxpayer-funded organisations like the ABC to come after and make up stories is the worst part. Yeah. And edit gunshots to come after veterans. I mean, I'm sick of this shit. I'm so sick of this shit. Well,
they know if they destroy it, they can. This is whole how socialism works. It's how. I hope I'm not being too excessive here. It's how communism works. They've got to destroy what's there to put in place what they want. And so this is part of it. And it's conniving, They useful. The terminology even they use. They need useful idiots. They need people who do their work. But their overall purpose is to destroy society, remove religion, remove the honour system that's there, deconstruct the patriotism, get rid of it all, and then they reconstruct it in their form. And of course, at the centre of their new form is them. And you've got to, I think people, because they're so busy, they don't sort of get it and they don't, go with it. But all of a sudden, God willing, people get to a point and go, no. Look, I've just been letting you go along because I've just been too busy and I just don't want the grief. But now I'm going to, you've woken me up, I'm awake, and now I'm going to fight.
Well, I think the biggest fight on our hands at the moment is everyone's waking up to immigration, right? We had Peter Malinauskas. Like, you can tell people are pulling at straws when he came out a few months ago saying that Australian culture is shit, we need to bring in other cultures to make it better. And then two, he came out and his one point to push forward to immigration to everyone was, who's going to wipe your ass when you're 90 years old? And I'm like, firstly, now you're pretty much just admitting that we're not bringing in doctors and engineers. We're actually bringing in what you refer to now as ass wipers.
Yeah, yeah.
And then also as well on the back of that, sorry to cut you off.
No.
It's, you know, they are now admitting that they are still driving forward towards us of mass immigration. And like, this is one of the biggest subjects now, which is being discussed, is immigration. I'm like, we can't keep going this way, because I have some very, very hardcore views on immigration. Personally, like, and I don't want this to be an attack. I don't think One Nation is going hard enough on immigration.
Yeah.
I think we can be going harder. I think we need to be going harder, but it's going to be a massive debate going forward. So what's your, what's your thought about all this with immigration and Australia's stance on it?
Well, there's a lot of questions there, Sam. I'll try and answer them in seriatim. First of all, mate. Peter gets a long way. Stephen Malinowskis gets a long way because I'm
Peter Malinowskis.
With Peter, there you go. Yeah. That's Stephen Marshall. He wasn't he? Didn't he hit the high notes? Peter Malinowskis gets somewhere because, I'll be honest, he's good looking, right? Okay, so that a lot of Peter's policy is his mirror. Okay, and the second thing is he's had a hopeless opposition. David Spears sticking coke up his nose. I mean, for real. I mean, what? And then saying it was AI. I mean, this is honestly, and that's supposed to be His Majesty's opposition is crazy. And then, so he's got away with everything because he's had nobody up against him. And as far as I think it's a real slap in the face if that's what he said, that Australia's got the wrong culture. No, Australia's got a great culture. We have a great culture. And I don't believe in multiculturalism. One of the things that took me to One Nation, I don't. When someone says, I think that's some absurdity.
Me too.
Because if you get multiculturalism, you get a balkanization, and then you get friction, and you get hurt, and you get death. Because let's face it, Aztec culture was a culture. It just believes that you've got to take people to the top of a temple, open them up, take out their beating heart, chop their head off, and let it roll down for the sun to rise. Now, very strong culture, the civilization, without a shadow of a doubt. But you say, but that's a culture, but that's anathema. And we have cultures now. They come in and they say, this is our culture, and you say, it's an anathema. Their section, the fundamentalist Islam is an anathema. It might be culture. It's 100%. There is absolutely no doubt about it. It is a culture. But it is not a culture that is acceptable in Australia. And there are other things that are evolving cultures, like, we have this amorphous concept of anybody, blokes can be girls and girls can be blokes and can both be kittens if you choose to be. And that's a culture, but it's an anachronism, and it's completely at odds with Australia becoming strong. And I tell you what is a really strong culture, and it's going to it's going to eat our lunch. And that is, and this is not trying to be too grandiose, just because I grew up in a family that always dealt with challenge and response with, what was it? China's got a culture. They're pretty damn strong one. It believes in the middle kingdom. It believes above them is heaven and below them is garbage or poo. And they're in the middle, and you ain't with them. It has a preordained destiny. It has the capacity to organise its people with discipline to a unified purpose. And it sees us as delinquent. It sees us as weak. It has a capacity, China, to create vassal states, communist China, to create vassal states. That means they don't have to invade you. They just have to put a foot on your throat, and then they've got it all together. We have a huge reason for us to be a vassal state. We have massive resources, and we're indolent in how we've tried to utilise them, where there's only 27 million of us here. Although it doesn't require much to put themselves in a position of complete domination over us. If the Americans basically retire from their engagement in an emphatic way in the Western Pacific, we are in a world of trouble. And I'll give you 3 ways I can do it. First thing is they've already given us 14 terms of engagement. The Chinese are public about it, and I'll rejoin this with something at the end. First thing they'll say is there's no control on immigration. Any person from communist China who wants to move to Australia can. They've got a fair few of the fifth column already here because you can see they can organise for demonstrations. Number two, they'll say we can buy any asset we want. There'll be no foreign investment review laws. And in the past, I strove and fought for and got a huge correction in our FIRB laws because I could see Chinese state-owned enterprises muscling in. And number three is the biggie. They'll say from now on, you will only trade as your international trading currency in Chinese yuan. That's it. Which they're already doing with BHP. That means they determine the value of everything in your nation. And you might say, for your building here, Sam, they'll come and say, I want to buy it off you. And you go, I don't want to sell it. No, I really want to buy it. Well, give me a price. And you go, look, I'm going to be ridiculous. $10 million. And I'll say, you got it. You go, how do you do that? Because I've just determined that $10 million is worth $1 million yuan. And there's your 10 million Australian dollars. Now give me a house. Now get out in the street. And we're just not ready for this.
No.
We are just not ready for it. And this year, remember, President Xi says he's going to take Taiwan by 2027. We're in 2026.
Do you think he's going to do it?
Yeah, I don't think the guy's a bullshit artist. I think he's on. I think it's on. And he's probing, he's testing, he's intimidating.
They've been doing that for 2 to 3 years now.
And he's testing Trump. And he's basically, and when he does, we'll have for a period, or maybe for a very, very long period of time, no coal exports, no gas exports, no iron ore exports, no beef exports, because all sea lanes and a major market, because they are a major market, will be shut down, and we will be toast.
Yeah, I think India, China, Japan, Taiwan are all major buyers of our coal and gas.
Yeah.
And if anything kicks off in that part of the world, we are not exporting there at all.
So what's our dollar going to be worth? Nothing. Who's going to think you're going to sell your coal to what? New Zealand?
Let me give you a terrible scenario which potentially might happen in the next few months. Israel and Iran go at war.
Yep.
The US backs them. And then whilst that is happening in the Middle East, China then take Taiwan.
Yeah, look, you're distracted. I mean, do you think for 1 second there wouldn't be communications going on between Tehran and Beijing?
Of course there would be.
Yeah, so if you can distract them, you tie them up in the. I mean, you can only put the USS General Ford in one place at a time, and right now it's positioned
all around the Middle East.
Yeah, all around the Middle East, and and you can only have so much of your platforms designated to a certain area, and of course it gives a strategic weakness somewhere else. And the United States in the past could fight on two fronts, but now China is vastly more powerful proportionally in the world than Germany was before the start of the Second World War. And so the resources to deal with that, and you've got to also ask the question of the American people, are they committed in such a form as the mums and dads of Tennessee and South Carolina and New York and California and Montana will say, I want my sons and daughters to go over to Taiwan in a hot war where China can resupply incredibly easily, and we're extended out to die, and it'll be a mincing machine. It'll be a hot war. There's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. Well, you can see what's happening in Ukraine, millions. It goes over a million will die fighting for an island off China. Now, a lot of American people might say, "No, I'm not into that." But here's the rejoinder. So do you think they'll say, "Oh yeah, but we're willing to do it for Australia"? They'll go, "Look, we'll give you support, right? We're going to help you out, but you guys have got to sort your own problems out a bit, because we have sort of, we're not really in that space like we used to be. We believe they are." And so we believe that the mums and dads of Tennessee are going to send their sons and daughters to Australia to die because the Australians couldn't get their shit together and didn't really have a defence force.
Well, we have a defence force right now that's worrying about DEI hires. Trust me, I know, because I have a whole bunch of mates that are in recruiting.
Yeah.
And they're saying we need to get their quotas up. We are being told to get quotas up. And it's no longer the best person for the job. It's the who ticks the gender boxes.
Yeah, well, this is crap. I mean, unfortunately, I don't want to be so grandiose, but Bullens really don't care. You have the capacity to do your job, or you don't. And if you don't, not only are you going to die, other people around you are probably going to die trying to cover for you. And that's, the Israelis worked this one out. They had, women in frontline positions. And, of course, what the old Arabs would do is shoot the women and watch the blokes come out to try and get them and then shoot them as well. And we just got to stop thinking the world and genetics and science and everything changes for a political for you trying to assuage your political realities. It doesn't. It's brutal. Physics and physiology and the motivations of people in want of power remain brutally constant.
Well, there is and we were talking about before, like you had a waking up point or whatever back in the time where they tried to, jump on veterans back in the 80s or 90s, or whatever. It's happening now.
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you it's happening now. There's no way that a platform like mine or Big Chocky's would have went from 10,000 followers to almost 500,000 followers in under a year if there wasn't pushback. I mean, look at what Karl Stefanovic is doing. He's moving away from the mainstream media, and now he's starting something else because he can see something else is brewing as well. We all can, and it is. And the polling suggests that right as well in One Nation.
It's come from
nowhere,
zero to hero. And
like the last 2 months, they've come from nowhere.
It's on because, as I say, the movement's on. The movement's on, and it's people. They've realised that, as I was saying today, don't look for the Messiah on your shoulder. Look for the person in the mirror. That's the only person that's going to help you. Yeah,
I like that.
It's you go to the bathroom and say, "This is the person that's going to change my nation." That person right there, and then go out and do it. And for some, it's just going to the meeting, and then of course at the meeting you're sort of rallying them, saying, "Okay, it's over to you now. You got the job. You got the job." And I thought, don't labouring. You're in the military. I'm not labouring military terms, but it's section command. Here's your area, mate. It's your section. All you have to do is win your section. That's it, right? Don't worry about. Leave the rest of the CO. Leave it just. You win that street. You win that booth. You win that town. There's your section. Go out and win it. And if we do that piece by piece by piece by piece by piece, as long as we're not wacky and crazy and stupid, we're cogent and balanced and thinking through the right sort of prism of values. Then we turn this nation around, and it just so happens that the vehicle that was there to do it, that was apparent, and the most likely vehicle, not perfect, but no one's perfect. You work on it. Was One Nation. People said that's it. That's the vehicle that's going to do it, and they're jumping on board, and let's see where it ends up.
It's going to be very interesting, right? I don't think When was the last time like a third party came up and challenged the two parties?
Never.
I think last time I read it was before World War II.
Yeah, before the advent of we had the United Australia Party, but it was sort of like challenging. It was just sort of like a more of a febrile environment of a whole range of parties sort of circulating around each other. The Labor Party was probably predominant, but then a whole heap of others on the Conservative side circulated around each other. But
you know how I know there's a massive movement happening in this country is practically socialist Melbourne. And I like to call California Melbourne.
Yeah,
is that One Nation is starting to poll sometimes higher than both parties. It's like, what's happening? Like, something's happening when it's happening in Victoria. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I suppose that's the thing that people are seeing. They used to have a tribal. It faded probably. It's been fading pretty well. A tribal allegiance to a party. Like my family are Labor voters. My family are Country Party voters.
Were they really?
No, they're not.
Oh, no.
Actually, my old man would have started as a Labor voter, 100%.
Yeah, okay.
And then, after a while, as my old man used to say, everyone's a socialist before the age of 24, and everyone's you don't have a heart if you're a socialist before the age of 24, and you don't have a head if you still are after 24. So I think it's people evolve in their views, and what's happening in Victoria now, they're just saying the Labor Party is just a word. It's a word. It's a word that means something entirely different to what it meant when people were boilermakers, fitters and turners. And then there was actually a manufacturing industry to support people who worked.
Well, the unions have also got their dirty mittens into the Labor Party over there, and obviously, the $15 billion funded out.
Yeah. And you ever look at it, like all these unions, if you dig under it, they're either corrupt and they're just a union, just a guise for corruption and basically criminal actions, or they're a union for sort of white collar social workers, you know, and that's all very well and makes them feel good in that space. But other people say there's just no association with what you do and me, and so that structure is gone. The wider thing is, once upon a time, in the Labor Party were labourers that actually laboured. They were fitters or turners or shearers.
The party for the people.
Yeah,
right?
they were people who'd worked outside. You could just see it almost in their physical aspect of how, you know, when you met them, they were people who'd laboured. The National Party in the former country were farmers, overwhelmingly farmers. And when I started with the National Party, the farmers. I just, you know, and they weren't big time farmers. Just it was almost like an extension of the Rotary Club or something else, that they went to a National Party meeting and that was what they did. Liberal Party, there were lots of solicitors, I must admit. They had a lot of professionals and small business people. But now it's, you know, if you, not totally, but in a form, if you went down to a Parliament House and you threw everybody up in the air, and they all got amnesia in the air, and then they came back on the ground and you put their political parties in the corner, now said, run to your philosophical corner, they'd run around in circles. They'll go, well, which one gives me the best job? You go, it's not supposed to work like that. It's supposed to. There's supposed to be something ingrained in you that drags you to a corner. It's not just about you having a job. And also, what happens in politics is they say, well, I've got to do something, and because there's not that sort of life experience of being a farmer, being a labourer, a bit of anger, a bit of resoluteness, then they find other spurious causes to become part of and become enthralled in, and climate policy is the big one. It's this nutsball, and this is then what they live for, and within Parliament House, that crazy boarding school called Parliament House, because it is just a boarding school. Everybody lives somewhere else. They come there, big white building on a hill. They ring the bells like classes. You go here, they ring the bells. They go there. You got General Assembly, question time. You got prefects, ministers. They eat together, they sleep together. Then they ring the bells and they all go home. And within that peculiar culture is the capacity for things such as climate change to become so important. Because in boarding schools, a lot of the times I went to one, things that are absolutely, you know, so important to the boarding school, it's really a shock when you go outside and people say, no one cares about that. And in the boarding school, you think you're the best, you're the smartest. No, you're not. You think you're the best footy players, and then you meet people who play footy somewhere else. No, you're not. It's just the culture of that boarding school. Parliament's like that. That's how. But it wouldn't matter, except they're running Australia.
Yeah, I've had this conversation with so many people. Is that how disconnected Canberra has become from the rest of Australia?
Yeah. Well, but. Okay, so this is what's happening now, and what you're mentioning is an epiphany. People are starting to say, they've come to the realisation, they always thought it would sort of fix itself up, but like a flat tyre, it doesn't. It doesn't fix itself up. All of a sudden, you've got to stop the car, get out, and change it. And if you change it, the car will go again. But if you keep running with a flat tyre, you're going to go down to the rims, then you're going to damage the axle and the whole thing, and then might as well take your car to the wreckers. Well, it'll just stop, I suppose. That's the point, it'll just stop.
I mean, I think one term is called draining the swamp.
Yeah. Well, the draining the swamp is, it's going to be harder for Australia to do that, because what happens in Australia is it's structured so that the bureaucracy remains pretty static.
Yeah, so they keep their jobs.
They keep their jobs. So you can only sort of really sack the secretary of a department. You can't. What you should be able to do is go through the whole department and find out the areas that don't comply with the new direction you want the country to go, and what bureaucrats, some are good, some are not. Some are absolutely driven by their own left-wing ethos, and a lot of them would be strong Green voters. And no matter who's in power...
How many do you reckon of those are in there?
I'd say about 70%.
Yeah?
I think they've actually done polling about how they vote, and about 70% vote Green. I remember reading that. And
really?
So this is a problem.
Wow.
So they... And they can say all the right things because they see politicians come and go.
Yeah.
See, there's a big difference between winning an election and changing government. Winning an election is just it's just a numerical thing on a certain night. I've won the election. Changing government is actually going to departments, going to policies, and changing them completely, changing the direction. That's called taking government. Before, all you've done is won an election. And if you get lazy people who are enthralled in the position and not really philosophically driven, winning an election is all they want to do, because then they become. I'm not so bitching because it's behind me, but they get the money. It's $400,000. That's good money. They get called honourable. They fly here, fly there. It's pretty nice. They pay for the phone, pay for the car, pay for the fuel. Don't have to pay for the office. Don't have to pay for the staff, pay for the photocopier, the whole lot, right? And all they want to do is win the election, because that's their goal is to win the election, and that's their sunny uplands. But what we need is people who say, I want to win government. I want to change the nation. I want to change the direction. I'm willing to put it all on the table to get there.
Because I think our government is bloated, right? Like, there is way too many people in there.
We got 3 tiers. A lot of jobs duplicated. It's crazy.
Yeah, and when you have jobs duplicated, you have a higher government, higher spending, more borrowing, more printing, higher debt levels, more inflation, higher interest rates for the people. So, I mean, and generally the right side of politics is more about smaller government.
Should be.
Yep, should be. I mean, is this one thing that One Nation wants to push back on?
Absolutely. Yeah, look, that's good. I know this is probably a bit dry and a bit boring for a lot of people, but it's really important.
They'll love it, mate, don't worry.
If you actually look through you can get all the government ministers, right? And we might have 23 ministers, but the actually silos is only 15. Because, for instance, Treasury and Finance are in the same silo. They're basically doing similar jobs. And such as environment and climate change. Just get rid of climate change. Just get rid of it completely. Climate change and energy, you can get rid of it. And it can be absorbed back into environment. In fact, you could even look at environment and wonder if it could. See, you actually go back to your 15 silos away from your 23, 22 ministries. A lot of times people get ministries to placate a person's ego. And if you actually have a look at their title, you go, why can't that person do that job? And we can say, and because no doubt if you've got that job, you're going to need staff, departmental officials, a building, all that to go with this sort of creation.
Millions of dollars.
Climate change and energy, the classic one, probably costs you hundreds of billions of dollars actually, but over tens. Yeah, absolutely. Capacity investment schemes.
Do you say hundreds of billions or 100 millions?
No, hundreds of billions.
Hundreds of billions.
By the time we're finished with it, because I'll tell you how you're going to do it.
I thought you just misspoke.
No, I didn't.
Ooh.
See, what you're going to have, and I'm not saying in a year, I'm saying over the period of this so-called evolution to their desire to get to net zero, will be up for hundreds of billions through capacity investment schemes, through all the sort of affiliated infrastructure, to investing in transmission lines, to the duplication and sort of expenditure by states, to the whole thing. By the time you get to it, in this quest to get to net zero, we'll be looking at hundreds of billions of dollars. We actually could have fixed our defence force for the money that we're going to spend on this insane idea that we're going to change the temperature of the globe. So that,
especially when we're 1% of global emissions.
And we're going to do nothing. We're not going to change the weather.
And also, the weather's never been static across hundreds of thousands of years.
And have any of these people said, "Look, if I can't change the weather, I'm going to resign"? Yeah. It's just this mythical trip, and they guilt trip you into idiocy.
Oh yeah, they've been hitting on our morals now, and they always hit us on the next generation. Oh, it's for your kids.
Oh, yeah,
well, how about the debt we're printing for our kids? Yeah, how about that?
$1 trillion is, I think, 31,000. A trillion seconds is 31,700 years. And they talk about $1 trillion like it's, and then people talk about $1 trillion as if it stops there. No, it's actually accelerating. It's unless you do something dramatic. I used to be the shadow finance minister way back. It was 2008 or something like that. It was one of the first shadow ministries. I got booted from it because I had the temerity to say, if we don't get off this trajectory, now our debt then was below $100 billion. So if we didn't get off this trajectory, our debt could go through $500 billion. And I said, that's outrageous. You don't know what you talk about. Secretary of the Treasury laughed at me. The Treasurer laughed at me. The Governor of the Reserve Bank all said how stupid I was. I got it. They're right. I was wrong. It's gone through $1 trillion. It's just, and here you go. It ain't stopping.
No, it's not.
That's and
we're scheduled to go to 1.2 by 2028.
We'll be broke, and you get to a point where it really doesn't matter. It's just a number, because people realise that you have financially lost the plot, and you have an incapacity to cover your debts as and when they fall due.
Well, I understand when you say like the number doesn't matter, but it definitely matters to Australian people when their taxes are going to paying off the interest repayments. But I understand that how it's like,
it's not so much that what I meant by the number doesn't matter. It's the reality of where you are. See, people focus on the number. They focus on the number, and so what actually matters is the effect. The effect of the number is one of your biggest items now on your budget is just meeting your interest expense. One of your biggest items on your budget is going to be a lot bigger than defence. It's going to be one of the biggest items, full stop. So really, a lot of people, the Australian people, go to work all of Monday, all of Tuesday, and then I'll start working a lot of Wednesday just to pay the debt of the government, just to pay government expenditure.
Yeah.
So you become less and less free and more enslaved to fixing up government debts, because in your wage packet, if you took that as a proportion of your week, you say, I've worked all that time. I didn't start working for myself till around about, I'm going to make it up, 9 o'clock on Wednesday. All before that was just to pay for all this other stuff. And a big part of that other part of paying for other stuff was interest. Interest on a debt I really had nothing to do with. And that's not going to change until Australia has a real epiphany of getting substantial assets on their balance sheet, which are actually the seed stock of growing a business. What are they? Dams, freight rail, ports. If you want goodwill, developing markets, coal-fired power stations, baseload energy. And that to get there, you have to break so many of these little tin gods we've created of, you can't have ports because it affects the frogs. You can't have coal-fired power because we're going to change the climate. You can't have a freight rail because the sacred scrub that resides between this town out in the west and that town out in the west.
This is what happens when you have a government that's run off ideology.
Yeah.
And it's destroying this nation, and I'm fucking sick of it.
Who drives that? Well, there's a lot of people get paid a lot of money to sit in departments and find problems and create speed humps for Australia. And they do that by finding problems that apparently they're going to manage. A cultural problem with indigenous stuff at some area, an environmental problem with a sacred frog. We got to have massive environmental offsets and pay hundreds of millions of dollars. Like I've got a dam up that we try to put in at Tamworth called Dungowan Dam. They came up with this massive bill. It's about 1.2 billion. It's just crazy. I couldn't work it out. It was so big. And then I looked into it, and it was about $600 million was environmental offsets. That was just paying money for amorphous concepts, study of Ningaloo Reef, go investigate a spider up in the Daintree, whatever. I'll give you another one. See, this is good. At Denman, there was a aged care facility. There was an old rough paddock, old fences, a couple of stumps, wire grass, just dry. They said, we'll put more units for to look after the aged people on that paddock. And they said, sure. They said, we put in our DA. The environmental offset bill came back. This is what they had to do for that 10 acres. $3.5 million.
Ooh.
That's, what they could have done? They could have built more units with that money. They could, and because they didn't build those units, that means those aged care people stayed in town, which means the houses weren't free, which meant other people looking for a house couldn't find a house because, and we've somehow rationalised this garbage.
And not only rationalised it, it's now at the forefront of the mind for most young Australians around Australia. One thing that I was really, really surprised at? They did a poll from 18 to 35-year-olds over in Victoria.
Yep.
And it used to be like the Greens was at the top, then it was Labor, Liberal, and you guys. Now it has just done a 180.
Yeah.
Young people now are realising, because I was having this chat with Carl and Chalky yesterday off air, the dream my parents grew up with right? My dad used to always say to me, Sam, own your own home, own your castle. You're like, your castle is your house. This is what you worked for.
Yep.
It's your pride and joy. And we always spoke about that. And now, like, saying that the dream of all Australians is to own their own home, that is just a boomer saying. Like, no one can talk about it. Like, the younger generation laugh at that.
Yep.
Own your own home. What, when you're telling me wages are 10 to 15 times your yearly earnings for a house?
Yep.
I mean, back in the day when my brother bought his first house in 2005, housing was 2 to 4 times your yearly earnings.
Yeah, I was an accountant. I used to tell people, add up all the income in your house, you, your partner, your wife, whatever, multiply it by 3 and never go beyond that number. That's how you're going to do it. That's how you're going to do it safely. Now we're talking 12, 13, 14 times. And you say to people, mate, you just need a tiny increase in interest rates and you're in strife. What happens if your partner, your wife gets sick? How are you going to deal with it then? You're gone. You're gone. And then, where you're out of the market and you have a look at housing now. I mean, it sounds like there's a whole heap of bitching, right? Go to build a house and find out how much you have to spend before you even put a spade in the ground with all these things. What they try to create, they say, we're worried about the housing crisis. And then they create regulations to try and inspire some risk-free approach for which the beneficiary of the expenditure on the regulations is a bureaucrat or quasi-bureaucrat. And then they shut down the forest so you can't get any Australian hardwood out. And they make it all imported materials, and they bring in a sort of a carbon, this climate policy, so we can't make anything here, so everything's got to be imported. So, I mean, it's like you go back to them and say the rhetoric that you want to fix the housing crisis is just rubbish. Because you think if you just say it, that we'll all understand that you've somehow done it. They've got this housing fund, Housing Building Australia Fund or BAF fund. It's only built a couple of hundred houses because people just can't afford it. And now their solution is to get something that's completely unaffordable and let you put even a smaller deposit down. So you've got even more debt. And all that happens is it just pushes up the price of houses for the existing stock you've got. And then on top of that, they'll bring in 550,000 people a year. They're really happy about last year, 24, 25, because only 303,000 people came in.
If you took away the record numbers, that would still be the third highest on record that year. It's just like, I think Canberra's about 395,000 people. So go have a look at Canberra, go stand up on top of Mount Ainslie, have a look around you and go, now last year, did they build that many houses for these people who came in? And then look at the schools and say, did they build those schools for all these people coming in? And then look at dams, Cotter Dam, and go, have they built new dams in Australia? None. They just brought in a whole heap of people and said, I don't know, go out and find a house. Well, they brought them in as well and put most of them on NDIS.
Yeah, sit them down. I'm on NDIS. My child's depressed. You can look after him on the NDIS. I noticed your child's a little bit depressed too. I'll look after him on NDIS. I'm getting paid. You're getting paid. Neither of us work. Perfect.
And again, this is these like bloated, like departments that need to be cut down. My biggest thing with immigration, though, and I'm very hardcore on immigration, Barnaby. Yep. I speak very, very passionately of immigration because
I'm getting that. I'm getting that feeling.
Yeah, but and like I like what you said before. You sort of reject the multiculturalism. Like I accept the multiculturalism from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s because the Italians and the Europeans, they came here and they worked.
But they're heading towards a culture which was Australia. They didn't you don't go walking around Adelaide, where we are here, and find people speaking Greek. They might be able to speak Greek, but they speak English. You don't find them just I don't know, living in sort of little cabals of themselves, and they haven't mixed. You find there are Greeks who married people of Irish heritage, have married people of English heritage. They're all playing footy together.
European descent.
They got it. But what we are having now in Sydney is you're getting multi-generational people who just stay in their cabal. They're not getting out, and that is it. And if you walk into their area, there's nowhere in Adelaide that if I walked I would feel threatened, or they just say I wouldn't talk to you. But there is in Sydney. Yeah, you go in an area and they go, well, you just don't belong here. I can tell why. But looking at you, you don't belong in this part of Sydney.
Yeah.
And that is another thing which has flipped the switch on a lot of people. So I'm over that.
Yeah, and just my back on multiculturalism before. Like I think the modern day multiculturalism is only sold to us because our government is $1 trillion in debt, and we need people in to service that debt every single year. Like that's why I just think to myself, well, hang on. So you're flooding us with half the planet every single year because you can't manage the government properly. So you are paying off the debt and interest on the payment. So you need to flood people in to service that debt. And I just think to myself, like, why should I and why should my family and why should Australians have to suffer for a government that can't manage themselves properly economically? Like, this really makes me angry.
Because there's so few people in government now who actually run their own business. I'm lucky I still do. And business works like this. Obviously got your P&L, expenses and revenues sitting over here. And you got over here, you got your balance sheet, assets and liabilities. Now, you'll always hear the government talk about new expenses. Oh, we're going to give more money for childcare. We're going to give more money to NDIS. We're going to give subsidies to help you pay your power bill. All on expenses. You go, that's fine, Cyclone, got it. Mm-hmm. How are you paying for it? Mm. They go, well, I don't know. And then they think, new tax, new revenue.
Or we'll borrow more money and sell them as government bonds.
Yeah, we'll find more ways to tax you. Changes the capital gains tax. So, they've sort of snuck back a bit, but they'll sneak in towards death duties there for a while. And then they come up with all these great new moral ways to increase taxes, which is the revenues on their P&L. And then when that doesn't work, they just go to the balance sheet and get greater liabilities. They borrow more money. The part you never hear them talk about, because they're not competent, because they've never had the experience, is how you build up your assets to cover your P&L. And for them, they've fallen into this trap because every time you go to build up the assets, they've got a religious, a cultish reason to not do it. How you build up your assets? Well, what makes you money? Good assets make you money. I'll give you some good assets. Coal mines, bloody good asset. Makes money. Makes money if you get them going. You got the royalties, you got the taxes, you got the GST.
And what do we have heaps of?
Coal. Heaps of coal. Uranium, great asset. Develop it. And then you think, well, but to develop it, how do I inspire that development? You build a port and you get a big freight rail to go out into these precincts, and then it moves the product and you get paid. And then you go to the farmers, rather than every time you talk to a farmer, say, I love farming, here's a new restriction on what you're allowed to do on your farm. Here's a new law that says if you knock over that tree, you go to jail. You say, I want farmers to make as much beef as they possibly can. And, I want to sort of bolster up that agricultural side. And so you go around that and say, how do you do that? You build dams in certain areas. You create the water infrastructure so that they've got reliability, they've got security. Have you ever seen a big city without a big water storage? It just doesn't exist. Build the seed stock that grows the nation. And that way you're building your asset base. And you've got some prospect, maybe, if you pull your head in and trim your expenses and streamline the way you're doing business and remove the duplication between local, state and federal government, say, choose who wants the health department, because we're only having one. Which level wants to have it, because the other level's got to get out. Then you might have a capacity to turn this show around. At least see if you can lock in the debt, not have it grow anymore, and then just prove to yourself that you have control of your debt habit. But so I'm not trying to get you off debt. Let's just see if you can have a little bit less debt each day. Let's see if you can control the habit. And if you can't, it's like heroin. It's out of control, mate. And it's not gonna. You're not going to get off dead heroin till your life is completely and utterly dirt. Then you'll have the epiphany. Say, welcome to Argentina. There it is.
And my question is, where will Australia be then, and will the people allow that to happen?
You'll be a vassal state of China. People are, as Thucydides said, the powerful will do as they will, and the weak will suffer as they must. And so when you make yourself weak in a world where totalitarianism is on the rise, democracy's on the wane, America, we want the United States of America to be powerful, but, their comparative power in the world is definitely less than it used to be. comparative power. There might be the actual power is better, but the comparative power compared to China, even though they're in the ascendancy, that gap's narrowing. So you're living. By the time you become your weakest, you'll be in a world where those who have the strength will be able to exploit that strength, as they always do, and get a foot on your throat. I don't think it's weird. I don't think they'll invade you. No, but they'll invade. No, they won't.
No, they've never invaded.
That's a very expensive way to do business. You don't invade people. You get your foot on their throat and squeeze the shit out of them, and then they do what you tell them to do. That's how you do it, a cheap way.
Mm-hmm. What about because I hear Anthony Albanese this week. He's coming out and attacking the right side of politics, and I can see this come out and be set up from a mile away. Right?
Worried about something.
Well, he's worried about it as well, and he's also coming out and saying the biggest threat to Australian security is white supremacy, but you can see their whole language is starting to shift towards that, and I can see this being played out from a mile away. Right, One Nation is going to be labelled as a white supremacist organisation. So, and obviously he's not. He wouldn't be coming out on the front foot and saying any of this stuff if he wasn't worried, right?
Of course, he is worried.
Yeah. So what's your?
Well, first of all, it's an insulting lie. I find it disgracefully said that. Going back to the start of this interview, when I was a kid, we weren't even allowed to draw a swastika on the, pretend to draw.
Yeah, I'm not saying that he said that about One Nation. I'm just saying I can see where he's going with it,
because he can't understand it, and he's going back to this idea of I have to pin some tail on this donkey because I'm scared of it, and so he says, "Oh, you're white supremacist." I mean, it's ridiculous, we are conservatives. He's probably what else it says about the rest of the political dynamic is he obviously doesn't see the Liberal Party as conservatives. He doesn't see them as filling the mantle of right wing. And you know what? A lot of people in the Liberal Party and the National Party they agree with him. Their party does no longer fill the mantle of right wing.
They're not at all.
Yeah. So he's rightly described that we're not. But to say there's some sort of malfeasance, there's some evil, there's something that is quite evidently wrong, morally wrong, because I'm a conservative, that's offensive to me, because it's not. It's just my political view. I have more of a. I don't believe in chasing the sensible centre. I don't know what that means. What is the sensible centre? I think they're probably idiotic. If there's sensible centre is a crazy compass that could be anywhere.
Well, the sensible centre has been shifted so far left over the past decade that people like me are called a far right extremist, and I just taught common sense from 5 to 10 years ago. That's all. That I'm your normal person.
Yeah, well, they say this is a cup full of values, right? That's what I believe in. I can tell you what they are. They believe in the Judeo-Christian society. They believe in that a balance sheet has to have assets and liabilities that support the P&L. It's a belief in the family as the centerpiece of how society works. It's and I could go on and on and on. I know exactly what I'm on about, and that's called conservatism. Boom. It doesn't move. It doesn't go wandering all around the table. It's just there. It's truth, and it's right there. And my job as a politician is to say, I tell you what's over there and moving around. We're going to change the temperature of the globe. You know what's in here? Coal-fired power stations. You know what's in here? Baseload power. You know what's in here? That people have to have a love of this nation. From the word go, you have to be told this is Australia. Let's sing the national anthem. There's the Australian flag. You know what's in here? Cadet units. You know what's in here? Army Reserve depots. You know what's in here? Pride in your family, and knowing and saying quite clearly, I'm a family of honour. We've served this nation. We are honourable people. What's over there? Gender fluidity, climate change, multiculturalism, and it wanders all around the table. And the politics to say, here's the truth. I'm going to tell you why you should be here.
Now, just to finish off with, I have a massive audience from the ages of mostly young people, from the age of 18 to 35. What's one thing that you would say to them, right? Because I have a lot of young kids that are checking out. We call it black pilled. We call it being black pilled, right? And black pilled is like there's a red pill and there's a blue pill, and now there's a new black pill. And the black pill is like the government's done, the whole system has come crashing down. We don't have anything. We got nothing. These people have screwed us for years and years. Like, what do you say to the younger generation of Australia that are sort of really lost at the moment?
Hate to do it, but the weight's on your shoulders. Get involved. Here it
I
is.
like that.
You know, it's your time. You know, you got to stand up. And as I said, going right back, you want to know who's going to fix the problem? I can show you. I'll introduce it to them right now. Go to the bathroom, have a look in the mirror. There you go. There's the person that's going to fix it. And you got to say, what have I done? What did I do today that was part of the process of turning this show around? And you know how in the past you used to say, I don't want to say that because I get embarrassed. You know, say it. Just test your own fortitude. So when you're at a dinner or when you're talking to your mates and they say something, say, look, I just heard you said bullshit. You know, that's not, you aren't going to, you know, I'm just harking back to themes, but they could be a whole range. No, you're either a man or a woman, right? You can't be item C. There is no, you're XX or XY. There is no alternative C, okay? This country we have, if we get it wrong, there's not another undiscovered continent. This is it. Unless you want to live on Macquarie Island, I don't know where you go. This is it. You got a lot of cards on the table, Cyclone. You better have a bloody good hand. And you know the only person who's going to play that hand? You're the only person. And you know, unfortunately, I'd love to say it's all going to be all right. Everything's fine. Just go back to sleep, honey, and I'll wake you up when it's time for school. No, it's you got to do it. And for me, for my part, I suppose that's what dragged me into it. And you know, in the end, our time comes to an end. It always does. And you better be there to take over. You be, like I always say to kids at school, I said, you know, when I was at Woolbrook Public School, back in, I don't know, I think it's about 1976, kids came back to me. I remember one, Nita Scott. She said, yeah, Barney, when you're at Woolbrook Public School, you know what you used to tell us you were going to be? And I went, no, Prime Minister of Australia. We all laughed at you, just this bush school. We thought, what a joke. And then one day, you were the acting Prime Minister of Australia. And, okay, what's the point of that? It's not self-aggrandising. It's saying to the kid, there's nothing remarkable about me. That's you. That's you. Just want it. Do it. Believe in your nation. Don't be a nationalist because that's unquestioning. That means you have no questioning about. You just do as command without thinking about what you're doing. Patriotism. Say, I love, and therefore I sacrifice. I sacrifice because it's moral and correct, and I do it because if I sacrifice, other people live better. And if you think about it that way, it's the only way you can think about it, because there ain't nobody else. There's no fairy godmother that's going to fix this up. It's your job. And
I just wanted to just quickly go back to your point before. I said, I heard you say Judeo-Christian values. I don't know, there's something in me that just really believes that Australia is a Christian nation.
Yeah.
I don't think that. It is terminology. I just think, I think we're Christian. We're Christian
nation. One of the great things
about
the Australian flag, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
See that? St. Pat's, St. Andrews, and St. George.
Yes. I had this explained to me the other day.
And see, you know what? That's why it's become so more prominent, because people say, yes, well, we're a Christian country. Does that mean you trot off to church every day? No, you might, but you say, I'm culturally Christian, mate. That's me, and this nation's culturally Christian. Okay, it is, and there's nothing wrong. You know, Saudi Arabia is culturally Islamic. It really is. You can go over there, be a Christian, but make no mistake, it's culturally Islamic. You go to Thailand, it's culturally Buddhist. Respect it. It's culturally Buddhist. If you go to Japan, it's culturally Shinto. That's it. That's the way it is. And if you go to India, it's culturally Hindu. And if you go there, you recognise that you respect it. There's a lot of Christians in India, but it's culturally Hindu. They'll tell you that. Well, we are culturally Christian. And don't hand it over. Don't give up on it.
I totally agree. I just heard you tack on the Judeo-Christian. I think Judeo is Israel, and Australia is a Christian nation.
I think it's because your Old Testament is based on the premise of the sort of a Judeo concept, and then Christianity is subsequent. But obviously, for me, that's premier. That's a premier spot. That's right.
Yeah. So Jesus came and died for our sins, and then he obviously gave us a New Testament, which is a Christian foundation.
That's right. That's it.
And look, I think Australia's a Christian nation. We definitely agree on that. Definitely.
Yeah. So we're 100%.
Mate, Barnaby Joyce, I know that you're short of time. I'm short of time as well. But mate, thank you very much for jumping on Two Worlds Collide podcast.
My pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to Two Worlds Collide podcast. If you want to support what I'm doing, you can grab some merch or jump on my Patreon program. Both links are in the description. Until next week, take care, guys.